Welcome to the stage from all over, from both sides of the continent. We have Saruni Maina from Flutterwave, and we have Yele Bademosi of too many projects, historically, sort of like a man after my own heart. Nestcoin, what's the wallet? Onboard, that's right, Onboard, thanks. So this was gonna be a panel discussion, but you know, Khalifi happens to people, and somehow they just become ghosts. So there's actually two other panelists there. You can't see them, but they're there, I promise. Just trust me. So we're gonna have a fireside talk between these gentlemen. I'm equally as excited. We're gonna cover real world assets. It's called Tokens from the Tropics. So I'm gonna hand it over to the guys.
All right, thank you. Hey, good morning, everyone. Hey, come on. This is a group that didn't drink too much last night, so I need some energy from you. Good morning, everyone. All right, so I'm Saruni Maina. I'm a techie at heart, but I don't write code. So I always like to rough up coders because they hate it when non-coders call themselves techies. But here's the thing. You can't just build by writing code, right? You know, you need to sell it, you need customers, you need all of those other things. So the other thing that I like to fight is the term that non-tech in tech. I think anyone who understands tech, even if they don't write it, is a techie. So the lawyers in tech, the people in accounts, finance, the businessmen and everything, I believe they're all techies. So I currently work at Flutterwave. I run our crypto arm. So it's a one-man team. But a team is a team, yeah? Yeah, so this is a secret between us, you know, it's just one person. But if you ever meet outside there and you hear me say, my team and I, you know, it's me and the ghost that Jason was talking about. All right, so I'll give you a chance to introduce yourself, and then we'll get going.
Okay, my name is Yele Bademosi. It's good to be here all the way from West Africa, Nigeria. I think like Jason said, I've been involved in a lot of projects, but right now I'm the CEO of Nestcoin. We're building Onboard, which is a wallet and a on and off ramp protocol that allows you to go from stable coins or digital assets in a self-custody wallet like, you know, Trust, MetaMask, Coinbase wallet, directly to your M-Pesa wallet or bank account without having to go through an exchange or middleman. So happy to be here, and I've been doing a lot of stuff. So I was first hire for Binance on the continent, launched Binance in Africa, also founded Bundle Africa that was incubated by Binance that scaled to about 1.4 million sort of users in about 12 months. And on the side, I run a fund called Microtraction that has about 60 portfolio companies across 10 African markets. So yeah. Looking forward to our conversation.
Right, great. So before we get going, I had to plan this out. You know, I was really trying to make it cool. You know, be that cool host who'll make this really interesting. But since we have ghosts who can't answer, I'm sorry. I'm gonna dump everything on you because I'm not changing my plan.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
All right. So the way I wanted to do the introduction was, okay, you've given us the introduction. Now I want you to tell me one thing that you genuinely fear. And not that BS of I fear poverty. We all fear poverty. So don't be smart. Just tell us it's something that you genuinely fear, even if it's insects. So I'm going to start. So yeah, I fear crawling insects. Like, so you see the way there's those memes whereby they say, pillar of your strength, and then he's literally running away from a spider. I'm sorry, but that's me, you know, and I'm not ashamed about it. I just don't like insects. So your turn.
What do I fear? That's actually a very difficult question. So I don't think I'm scared of heights, but whenever I go to any place that has like really low railings, because I'm tall, I always just feel like...
Now you're showing off. Okay, let's try this again. I said, what do you fear? What do you fear?
I'm scared of falling over a railing.
Because you're tall.
No, I didn't say that. You said that, not me. So...
All right, let's get things started. So, assuming we have no idea what real world assets are, how would you describe it yourself?
Yeah, you know, crypto and our words, right? We like to try to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, someone said that that's a form of gatekeeping.
I think it is actually.
Yeah.
Have you heard the term tokenized deposits?
Oh my God.
That's what they're calling stable coins now. By the way.
Wow. Okay.
That's what the bankers are calling stable coins, tokenized deposits. So, okay. So to answer your question, right? Real world assets. Generally, I think it's any asset in the real world or off chain that is being tokenized and the value is now represented on chain, right? And I think it's a buzzword, but it's probably something that I'm most excited about because it's how you move kind of like the world on chain, and create like a more transparent, open kind of financial system. So that's kind of like how I think of real world assets.
Okay, so in respect to what you're currently doing at Nestcoin, how do you feel about the aspect of tokenizing African currencies? Because one thing, so let me give you a bit of a background in terms of what I think. Do you know what I believe is the reason why a lot of African countries, basically all of them, still rely on the dollar is because we don't trust each other's currencies. So if I want to trade with Nigeria, for instance, I'm going to offer you Kenya shillings. You're probably not going to say, no, what do I do with Kenya shillings? Yep. Same thing. If you come to me with Naira, I'm going to be like, hell no, what do I do? What do I do with Naira? Yep. And it's so amazing because now even our neighbors here in Tanzania don't want to touch our currency either. They're like, okay, we also don't want Tanzania. We don't want Kenya shillings. We don't want Tanzania shillings. Everyone wants to deal with the dollar. So do you think that tokenization could actually solve this?
Yeah, so it's interesting you said that. Recently wrote a white paper on sort of what African stablecoin will look like. And actually our whole premise is like, can we mint on chain African stablecoins that are backed by USDC? Now, one would say, why don't we do something that is similar to Circle? But given how, African governments are, if you have a bank account that is holding, hello? If you have a bank account that is holding, Kenyan shillings in the billions or Nigerian naira or like Ghana, the government will like shut that shit down, right? So it's like, how do you bring African currencies on chain to make it easier for Africans to transact, but still keep it really decentralized and sort of. So I think my mic is cutting in and out, but yeah.
Okay, all right. So still on that, do you think that governments and regulators should actually be involved in the tokenization of real world assets? In this case, just the currencies themselves. So I'm speaking about CBDCs. Do you think it's the right direction for regulators and governments to actually go and get themselves on the blockchain? So I've seen fears, just before you go, I've seen people making jokes that apparently if we adopt CBDCs, the regulator will wake up one day and delete, your bank account to zero because it's essentially just a spreadsheet. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think like, if you asked me this question maybe, 2 years ago or 18 months ago, I was definitely on the side of like unregulated crypto. But I think what the last 18 months or 24 months has shown is that as human beings, even if you have you have people who would always take advantage of those good intentions, right? So I think for the adoption of sort of crypto and it going mainstream, we do need regulators, right? So I think regulation for crypto is good and is what allows us to cross the chasm from kind of just being innovators or early adopters to something that the average woman on the street can use, right? In terms of CBDCs, like Nigeria recently launched the e-Naira, and it's definitely not been, a success. And I have like some thoughts about that, but we can talk about that later.
Yeah, off the record, yeah.
Off the record.
All right, great. So I'd also like to keep this interactive. So to the audience, if you feel like you have a question that can't wait until the end, just feel free to be like, yo, I want to ask a question. So I just love to get you involved in this conversation as well. So okay, question already? All right, let's go.
Okay, so I'm going to sort of rephrase the question, and was asking about what I think went wrong with the naira. So I think like the first thing is that we have to also accept that the naira, even though it's naira, it's still a new currency, right? So when Bitcoin started, there were very few people that were using this thing. So I think like long term, I still think it has potential to be successful. But the big difference between kind of like what the central bank has done and what they should do is that right now it's very banking led, right? And the banks have no incentive to make the naira successful, right? If you look at innovation that is happening across the continent, it's very startup driven. You rarely see banks sort of start or lead any innovation in financial services because they're making money and they're happy to stay a store, right? So when you have companies like ETHSafari, Flutterwave, Paystack, these are young startups that identify an opportunity and then build platforms for people to do interesting things. So if a startup going to build something for the naira today, they can't, right? And so I think like the first thing the government or the CBN should do is to figure out how to open up the naira, almost like an open banking platform, and then let startups innovate, let startups build applications and sort of use cases that is not top down, but it's bottom up. And that's something that we're beginning to see. It's not yet public, but it looks like in the next, let's say, 6 to 12 months, we're beginning to move in that direction. I think like you will see the utility and use case begin to occur. I would love to tokenize the naira because right now the naira is not cheap, right? So I would love to tokenize the naira, put it on an L2, and then let's innovate. That would be really cool. Imagine going from a USDC backed NGN stablecoin directly into naira and giving people like access to credit. That would be amazing, right? I would love to.
Yeah, I agree with you. All right, second question.
Okay, so here's one of my key thoughts when it comes to crypto, or rather, I call it on-chain finance. Again, terms, right?
Yeah.
We need to keep reinventing words so that when you go to a central banker, they don't think about like previous package. But the first thing is that for crypto to develop, we need global capital to come into the continent, right? There is no country or a continent that has developed and didn't have capital come from the external sources. Like China got money from the West, the US got money from Europe, right? Now the problem is if you're going to invest in Africa, you're also not just taking credits, you're also taking on like currencies, right? And so if I have, let's say, $10,000, I'm going to give it to a Kenyan small business. If I give you $10,000 at the beginning of the year, and then you convert that into Kenyan shillings, when you want to pay me back, the challenge is that you're going to be paying me back with the exchange rate that is probably worse. So I'm not sure. Like, what was the exchange rate between dollar and Kenyan shilling last year? Anyone remember?
Around 115, 118. Yeah.
And what is it now?
148.
148. So if I give you a loan of, like, let's say 8 or 12% in USD, right? Because you're spending or like earning in Kenyan shillings, like, you're gonna need to pay me back like 35% or something from currency loss alone, right? So that's kind of like where tokenizing like African currencies with stable coins come in. It allows you to kind of separate. And banks do this as well, right? So if you had USD, go to a bank, the bank will take the USD and then loan you, you know, the African currency using your USD as a collateral, right? And that's kind of like how majority of capital comes in. They're trying to do like FX hedge. So that's sort of like one use case. And then obviously that expands access to credit. Like I always talk about the fact that we as Africans are actually more liquid than people in the West, right? Because if people in the West had to pay for the tuition upfront, they couldn't get like a student loan. They went to get a car, had to buy the car upfront. They went to get a phone, had to pay for the phone upfront. They can't pay installments. Like you went to go to the hospital, paying everything upfront. Like most people wouldn't survive. But as Africans, this is our reality, right? And so we need to figure out how to create more liquidity on the continent. And I think like the reason why I'm so bullish on credit and like real world assets is it changes the way central banks and the average person thinks about crypto. Because most people think about crypto today, it's very like scamming, token go up, trading, but they can't talk about how it's useful for the average person. Imagine a future whereby as an African, you know, you don't need to worry about like where you're from, what you do, because you're building like on-chain reputation. And so someone, I don't know, in the West or in Asia can be able to give you a loan at 8%, you know, and you can have access to like way more stuff. So I'm actually really excited about like that future for sure.
Yeah, great. And to add on top of that, I think it's also a matter of, like you said, all of this tokenization, especially of the African currencies, is still very new. And it's very easy for us to get disappointed that, oh, the INR is not getting picked up. We heard that the CBK in Kenya also wanted to tokenize the Kenya shilling. And then people will be like, okay, it's also not going to pick up. So it's very easy for us to feel like, oh, this is not working just because things didn't pick up within the first year. Yet, we've been at this for how many years now? Close to a decade, probably more.
Then, like, you know, something that you don't realize as well with innovation
Yeah.
is it takes time, right? Like I saw people tweeting about like AI and the fact that AI has been around for 2 years and is so useful and people hasn't done anything in 10 years. And I'm like, excuse my friend, that's bullshit. Sorry. Because if you think about it, like the first time like people started investing in AI was like in the 50s, 60s.
I think Microsoft's paperclip thing was a form of AI. I don't know if you remember that. There was that, what was it called? Clippy.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we've had like, there was like, if you check the history of AI, there's been like 2 or 3 AI winters, right? So it takes time. And the fact that we're able to get to where we are without like any government support is crazy. Like when I got into crypto, if someone told me 5 years later, like the biggest challenge with Africans would be like the regulatory space, you know, I would have been very surprised. So in a way, crypto is where it is today, despite the lack of support from sort of global players.
All right. Yeah, let's move on a bit to something that should be fun to everyone. So speaking of real world assets and tokenization of African currencies, so how do we build wealth on the blockchain? Aside from, holding our crypto in terms of Bitcoin and Ethereum and hoping that things don't crash. Now let's bring it down to the real world assets. That person who doesn't care anything at all about what Bitcoin is, what ETH is, and all of those things. They just want to know, okay, how do I leverage this platform to build some wealth?
Yeah, so in my opinion, it's actually like pretty simple, right? The average person actually has a fear of losing their current value. So this one has $100, and that's like the life saving. You don't want to wake up one morning and like 35% is gone.
Yeah.
Right. So I think people should more Africans should hold stable coins, and then more Africans should look into yield bearing stable coins. And that's probably one of the things I'm most excited about. So you have companies like Congo that essentially tokenize US treasuries, and regardless of where you are, the same way how you can buy USDC,
Yeah.
you can buy USD treasuries on chain.
Okay.
And then you can earn 5 to 7% annually without like risking your currency.
All right, speaking of, and still touching on that as we wrap up, let's talk about real estate and tokenization, right? It's one of the things that are now coming up. It's becoming the buzzword for, real world assets within the blockchain community, right? So how exactly do we ensure that? So I'll give you an example of a Kenyan context. For you to buy land in Kenya, there's a lot of hurdles that you have to go through. Even if you have the funds, it's still very easy for you to lose your funds because someone might come and tell you that, hey, I'm going to sell you this piece of land and all of these cows here, you'll get everything, including the shed and all of that. Yet they don't actually own that piece of land. And because of corruption, you might even go to the government and do a search, and that piece of land will show that it's owned by Saruni today. However, once you give me the money, you go tomorrow and it's Njoku who actually owns that piece of land, and you can't figure out who Njoku is or where to get him. Now I have your money, and now you don't have a piece of land. So how exactly do we bring a sense of security when it comes to tokenizing these kind of assets that are very high risk, quote unquote, in terms of it's very easy for you to lose it if you're not careful, and also still maintain it on the blockchain. Mind you, the blockchain is still a very skeptical idea to a lot of people.
So my response to that is actually a bit contrarian. I think that the only way you're going to have sort of land and property on chain in a way that is going to be trusted is going to be similar to like CBDCs.
Okay.
It has to be government backed.
Okay.
Right. So the same way how governments are like saying we want to create, the e-student, it needs to be the same thing, whereby there's a ministry that is tokenizing those.
Yeah.
Because you need a single source of truth. Right. So I'm actually more, and unfortunately, I think this is, again, I said contrarian, but it's probably easier to tokenize property and real estate globally and then provide that access to Africans locally.
Okay.
That's because you have like more trusted institutions and things like that. But then, if you're going to do it locally as well, I would just look and say, okay, which local partners have been doing this for a while?
Yeah.
Right? So,
Yeah.
property developers, people have been around for like 10, 20 years. And then how do you take what they're doing, tokenize it and put it on chain to create more liquidity? Right? So those are the three kind of like vectors that one can think about it. Either it's going to be like government-led, or it's global sort of real-world assets and making that available to Africans.
Yeah.
Right? Or you find local partners that have been around for like 20, 30 years, and then the blockchain company is a blockchain partner. Is well-established, kind of multi-decade, really trusted local players.
I agree with you on two things. Yeah, like such kind of things actually need to be government led, and also we really need to have regulation within the space so that at least we're able to really move forward. Stop behaving like we are working behind a certain wall in a gray area whereby you're afraid that tomorrow morning the banks will be blocking all your accounts, especially for those who own wallets and do on-ramp and off-ramp. There's always that fear. You're like, okay, will M-Pesa shut me down tomorrow and all of those things. So as much as at the beginning of things, we used to fear regulation and be like, no, it has to be decentralized. We don't want this. Right now, I think for this to really scale to the masses, we need to have regulation.